Does your mind tend to race at nighttime? It makes it hard to fall asleep, or you wake up in the middle of the night and have a hard time going back to sleep? This video is going to be a deep dive into insomnia, a very specific subtype of insomnia, and we're going to go over all of the cognitive behavioral therapy techniques for insomnia that can be helpful. Now, I am well aware that I'm walking a fine line between being informative and being a little bit reckless by throwing out all these CBT-I techniques. So here are a couple caveats here. One, this is not medical advice. I always recommend using CBT-I along with a sleep specialist, particularly sleep psychologist. Number two, I'm not sharing anything that's necessarily proprietary or that's not already out there. I'm just giving it to you in a more consolidated fashion. Number three, I strongly feel that if I don't share this with you, you're more likely to go listen to the Mr. Uberman or whoever and start snorting magnesium glycinate. That's not what you need. And number four, I want to show you how approachable CBT-I can actually be. So here we go. Now, I've put the criteria for chronic insomnia disorder in the caption, but that's a large umbrella diagnosis. Many things can cause chronic insomnia disorder. I'm going to be focusing on a subtype known as psychophysiological insomnia, which is a sense of increased arousal, increased thinking, worrying, anxiety when you lay down in bed. Now, sleep hygiene is not the answer for this type of insomnia, but it's still important to practice good sleep hygiene. So here are the core parts of good sleep hygiene. And in particular, it's important to not nap during the day if you're having difficulty with insomnia at night. All right, let's dive in. Now, the core of psychophysiological insomnia is that the bed has become a place where you think and worry. So all the techniques we're going to go over, the core here is that we're going to make the bed the place where you relax and are calm, not the place where you think and worry. We want to unlink the thinking and worrying from bed. That's the whole goal. So as we go through each of these techniques, keep that core principle in mind. The first technique is known as sleep restriction therapy, probably the most effective therapy when it comes to CBT-I. For some that have difficulty falling asleep, they naturally tend to increase the time they spend in bed. So for example, they say, gosh, I can't sleep. I'm going to lay in bed for 10 hours and hopefully I'll get 6 hours out of that time. You're actually doing the exact opposite of what you want to do because you're going to naturally spend 4 hours of time in bed frustrated and thinking about trying to fall asleep. So sleep restriction involves figuring out how many hours roughly you're sleeping each night and then limiting your sleep window to that many hours. And by sleep window, I mean the time you're spending in bed. So let's say you're getting about 6 hours of sleep on any given night. Well, you figure out what time you need to wake up in the morning. So let's say that's 6 a.m. You have to be up ready for work. Well, if you have to wake up at 6 a.m. and you're getting 6 hours of sleep total, we're going to keep your sleep window at 6 hours. So midnight to 6 a.m. And you're only going to try to attempt to sleep in that 6 hour window. Now, once you start filling in that 6 hours with mostly sleep, we're talking 90% of the time you're spending asleep during that 6 hour window, then we start to open up that window by about 15 minutes, usually by moving bedtime earlier by 15 minutes. And you should also be falling asleep within roughly 15 or 20 minutes at the beginning of the night. If it's taking you too long, you want to keep that window restricted until you are falling asleep relatively quickly. Caveats here, you do not want to practice sleep restriction if you have epilepsy, or you suffer from bipolar or have a tendency towards mania because sleep deprivation can make mania more likely. Again, caveat, work with a specialist. This is just informational, not medical advice. Second core part of CBT-I is called stimulus control therapy. Now, your mind is a very powerful thing. When you walk into your favorite restaurant, you automatically start feeling hungry. You might start salivating because your brain knows what happens in that environment. When you walk into the gym, you're probably not going to feel hungry. You're going to start feeling revved up. Your brain does the same thing when you walk into your bedroom. So if you are used to the bedroom being a place where your mind is in this battle and you're worried and thinking, it's going to get into that mode. So with stimulus control, what happens if you are laying in bed for more than 15 or 20 minutes and you're not feeling sleepy, actually get out of your bed and do something boring until you feel sleepy again. This is, again, getting back to our core goal of not spending too much time awake thinking in bed. And if you do leave the bed, do something without excessive exposure to light that's not so stimulating, and then get back into bed when you're feeling sleepy. The third technique I recommend is called paradoxical intent. This is kind of like reverse psychology for your mind. Many people lay in bed thinking, gosh, why can't I fall asleep? Why can't I just turn off that switch? And they're trying to will themselves to sleep. And we know that kind of revs you up even more, makes it harder to fall asleep. So with paradoxical intent, you do the exact opposite. You lay in bed quietly and you tell yourself, I'm going to lay here awake and I'm totally comfortable being awake. All I'm going to do is be relaxed and be awake. Hey, I'm still awake. No problem. That's what I'm trying to do. That helps take off some of that pressure that your brain may be feeling trying to fall asleep. And so paradoxically, even though you're thinking about staying awake, your brain may automatically fall asleep. The fourth thing I recommend as part of CBT-I is journaling. In our fast-paced world, the only time we have with our own thoughts is often when we're laying in bed trying to fall asleep. And thus, naturally, all the things that we're worrying about and thinking about start coming up. What I recommend is spending a few minutes each day making a bullet point list of things that you tend to think about or worry about at nighttime. Take that list, fold it up, put it on your dresser drawer, and know that you've done your thinking for the day. That gives your brain a chance to mentally unload. Having fixed times where you have to unload things that are on your mind can help prevent you from thinking about them at nighttime. The fifth thing I'd like to do as part of CBT-I is decatastrophize sleep. And what does that mean? Well, try to put sleep into a little bit of perspective. Everybody's tracking their sleep. People are talking about all the benefits of sleep and all the terrible things that can happen if we don't sleep. So it's natural for people to start overthinking sleep and worry about what's going to happen to me if I don't get the rest that I need. And sometimes you got to hear this from a sleep doc, which is, yeah, sleep is important, but it's not that important. My tagline here is, yes, sleep is important, but it's not important enough to lose sleep over. All right, this is just an introduction, but I hope those techniques really kind of hit home for you and you have a better understanding of what could be causing or perpetuating your insomnia and things that you can do to help.